Hi folks, how you doing? This is Iqbal with NVIDIA Daily Analysis. Another positive closing for NVIDIA. So it's 5 days in a row. In this video, we'll discuss if NVIDIA can maintain the same momentum next week or not, and what are the data next week that can impact NVIDIA's movement. Now, let's get started. Starting with the daily summary, Nvidia opened at 121.94. It made a high 125. It made a low 121.18 and it closed at 124.58. That is 1.40% up. Last 5 days, Nvidia is up 17.1%. And last 1 month, Nvidia is down 1.41%. And last 6 months, Nvidia is still up 71.5%. So after making an all-time high, Nvidia went down about 35 or 40%, but it recovered very quickly, probably about 20% or 25% already recovered. So that's a good sign. And before the earnings, that's probably due 2 weeks from now, Nvidia still has some room to go further up. So after waiting time about 1 month, now I'm in profit on Nvidia. If you remember 1 month ago, I bought Nvidia around 120 and also around 126. So my break even was 123.50. But I'm still in loss on SMCI and Amazon. Let's take a look at SMCI. And besides Nvidia, overall major indices were up today. S&P was up about 0.2%, Nasdaq 0.21% up, and Dow Jones about 0.24% up. And one thing you can note that Nvidia was up today, but there was a chance that Nvidia could have gone down, right? It's slightly above from yesterday closing, 1.4% up. So last 5 days, Nvidia was up about 3 or 4% every day on average. So I was expecting some kind of sideways movement or little drop. But at least we have noted some slowdown on Nvidia today compared with past few days. So again, I have the opinion that since Nvidia is up probably 5 or 6 days in a row, maybe Monday Nvidia might show a little drop or some sideways movement. Now let's take a look weekly percentage change for Nvidia on the candlestick chart. So as you can notice, last 2 weeks Nvidia ended positive, and before that there were 3 weeks in a row negative closing. So sometime here, 2 weeks ago, I told you guys that there is a chance that Nvidia can go up from here. And that's what we saw, positive closing after that, and also one more positive closing this week. It's kind of similar to this pattern, right? Four negative closing, and then you see bunch of positive closing. So next week also I'm expecting a positive closing. Now let's take a look forward P for Nvidia. Nvidia forward P at this point is at 43.5. So much higher than the last week closing, and that's a good sign. Palantir 94.35, also higher than the last week closing. SMCI 19.79, higher than the last week closing, but I think SMCI has more room to go further up. It would also depend on Nvidia earnings. So if Nvidia beats earning with a very big margin, then this should help SMCI as well. AMD 41.51, that's also higher than the last week closing. So all four stocks forward P, higher than the last week. Now let's take a look historical data analysis for Nvidia. So Nvidia at this point 31.8% up from the previous earnings. And the last quarter, as we saw yesterday, Nvidia was up about 38% before the earnings. So for this quarter, it still has some room to go further up before the earnings. And if you take a look, cumulative percentage change for this quarter, you see a very steep curve for Nvidia in last few days. So Nvidia recovered very quickly. I was surprised also. I thought maybe Nvidia will take more time to recover, but you know, did excellent job in the recovery. Now let's take a look technical charts. You see 90-day hourly interval chart for Nvidia and also Fibonacci levels. At this point, Nvidia is around 124.19 after hours. The next level of resistance is at 125.32. In my opinion, Nvidia should not be able to break 125 level in the first attempt. That's another reason for me to think maybe we can see a little drop on Monday. But again, that's my opinion and assessment. I could be wrong also. And as I mentioned yesterday, this would also depend on the data gonna be released next week and also any unexpected event if happens next week can impact Nvidia price movement. So if you take a look economic calendar for next week, so the very first important event or data is going to be on Wednesday next week. That is minutes of Fed's July FOMC meeting. And also after that, Thursday, weekly initial jobless claim. And that would be important as well. And probably Friday, we should also look for Mr. Paul's speech. Let's see what he says. If he says something concerning about the job market or inflation, that could impact the market. But I'm not expecting he would say anything different what he said last month. So moving on, now let's take a look Bollinger bands. So you see Bollinger bands on your screen. So as we noted yesterday, the gap between the upper band and the lower band was shrinking. So that's why we see that Nvidia moved up, but the movement was not very big, just 1.3% up today. And Monday also, I do not see a big gap. So on Monday, I do not expect a big movement on Nvidia. I mean, big upside movement on Nvidia. But overall trend is up. After making this bottom here, you see the stairs are going up. One, two, and I guess it can make another stairs, right? And then it should reach to 130 before earnings. Now let's take a look MACD chart. So if you look at MACD chart, you see that MACD line is still above zero line. So that shows that Nvidia is still on positive region, positive. So I hope that it should carry the positive momentum next week as well. So even if we see some slowdown early next week, but overall, I expect next week should also show a positive ending week. Now, let's take a look some news regarding Nvidia. So you see some news regarding Nvidia on your screen, starting with this one that says Nvidia's stock sees biggest weekly gain in 15 months. So that's what I mentioned that, this week was very good for Nvidia, about 17 or 18% in just 5 days. So another one, similar news that says that Nvidia stock on pace for best week in over an year ahead of earnings, chip demand. So it looks like the chip demand is still very strong. So we should see some good revenue guidance in the earnings call. Now let's take a look this one that says trading at noon, consumer sentiment adds to picture of resilient economy. So consumer sentiment, if you noted, came better than expected. Let's take a look. So as you see here, today we got the consumer sentiment data, and that came 67.8 versus the forecast 66.7. And last week also, the actuals came higher than the forecast. So 2 weeks in a row, that shows consumer sentiments are positive. So that also shows that consumer gaining more confidence over time. And you know that in expansion economy, the negative trend of consumer sentiment is not good. So we are seeing positive trend from last 2 weeks, and that's also a good picture that shows consumer are showing some confidence on the economy. Let's take a look this one that says Nvidia stock gains. The latest signs of chip demand are good. So this also tells that the future outlook of the chip demand are good. And it's not a surprise. We know that the demand is there, but it's just a supply or the design issue that can impact the revenue guidance. But we cannot predict that. And so far, we saw some delay on the Blackwell chip design, but the delay was not considered by the market a major shock. I guess that's all about news regarding Nvidia. Let's take a look other AI stocks. So on your screen, you see most of the stocks on my watch list are green today. So almost all of them showed positive closing, except Amazon and Microsoft. So not just Nvidia, overall AI sector had a good day today as well. I guess that's all about Nvidia analysis and assessment for today and early next week. Regarding my positions, I'm still holding Nvidia stocks. I do not have any plan to sell before 1:30. I will watch how Nvidia behaves early next week. The only concern I have is on SMCI because I'm right now about 200 points down from my break even. So SMCI has to reach around 840. That will make my break even. But I hope it will recover soon before the next earnings. So nothing much I can do. And you know that the overall outlook for the chips is good. So there is no big reason to worry. And if there is another downtrend comes in next few weeks, and I guess that will be again a short-term thing. I hope you liked the video. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you more tomorrow. Take care.